Would the staff please invite the administration to come in?
各位同事，咁我哋夠鐘亦都夠人咧。
Members, this is the appointed time, and we have a quorum, so let's start the meeting of the subcommittee.
咁啊，議程一咧係關於照顧者。
First item on the agenda, progress report on the designated hotline for carer support and the one-stop information gateway for carers, CB bracket 2546/2024 bracket 01. So this is the paper for your information.
好，首先歡迎咧政府部門嘅同。
Let me welcome the administration to our meeting. So when you're ready, Under Secretary Ho, would you please start the presentation? Thank you, Chairman. We'd like to report to members the progress of designated hotline for carer support and information gateway for carers. Since 2023, the government has been progressively implementing a number of measures as announced in the 2022 and 2023 policy address to enhance support for carers, including setting up a designated hotline for carer support and a one-stop information gateway for carers. In July and October 2023, we reported the progress of setting up the above to the subcommittee and listened to your views. And in September and November 2023, we launched the 182-183 carer hotline and information gateway, respectively. The information gateway provides counseling, support, information, service, referral, and emergency support. We also liaise with the service providers to provide respite care, as well as provides transport subsidy for users to go to the respite service units. In light of the experience, the service operator arranged regular internal training to social workers, answering calls, assessment of high-risk cases, and the latest development of support services for carers. At the middle of April, the carer hotline has received over 20,000 calls. As for the information gateway, it covers information relating to elderly persons, persons with disabilities, their carers, caring skills, community activities, resources for carers, etc. The information gateway is also linked to the carer hotline and the vacancy inquiry system for respite service or emergency placement, which enables carers to seek support anytime. As of the middle of April 2024, the hit rate of the gateway was 350,000 times, and since its launch, it continues to update and improve its content. The number of registered service information providers has increased from 390 to over 510, including subvented elderly service units, rehabilitation service units, subsidized or self-financing organizations, community groups, thereby enriching the content of the gateway to provide more useful information to carers. We will leverage on different channels to publicize the services so that the carers and those in need would get the information that they need. We welcome views from members.
發言嘅同事咧可以撳掣示意。
Well, let's see if members would like to speak on this topic. Please press the button if you want to speak. I'll allow more time for members. 6 minutes questions and answers inclusive. Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chairman, for giving us so much time. 182-183, the hotline number is so easy to remember. In fact, Under Secretary Ho Kai-ming also helped publicize the hotline number on different public occasions, especially before long weekends. Well, I think that definitely Chairman would share my sentiment. During long weekends, we usually come across emergency cases, and there is a great demand for support services. We need to make sure that the hotline number 182-183 is properly publicized to reassure the public as well as members serving the public here. That is on top of the police hotline 999. There is also this 182-183 Carer hotline. The hotline is manned by 30 social workers. They provide professional support. It also has the capacity to take up the very keen service demand. Now, according to the paper, up to the 31st of March 2024, the hotline has received 16,490, or as you put it, by middle of April, some 2,000 calls. That means you get some 80 to 100 calls a day. Can you give us an analysis of the nature of these calls? Do you usually receive calls at night or during long weekends? Because some centers may be closed. So in terms of when you receive the calls, can you tell us whether there are any features? And also about the time allowed for each call. Do you set a limit? Say, maybe this social worker from Tung Wah Group of Hospitals is so kind that I'd like to tell this social worker everything about me. So do you have analysis about frequent callers and longer calls? The third point is that despite receiving a large number of calls, we need to make sure that it can help the users look for respite or day respite services and emergency placement. At the moment, this percentage is quite low. And as we always say, it is important to provide support to carers. We need to provide them with respite services so that they have some breathing room. Despite having strong calls in the community for this service, this hotline doesn't seem to receive a lot of calls for respite services or emergency placement. So can you explain this demand and supply gap? My final point is about publicity. You need to make sure that everyone knows, not just social workers, electrical members, but also carers and the elderly in particular. Are there ways to make sure that you can hammer home this message? Do you have APIs on TVs, display the 182, 183 hotline in the reel? And when they visit the HA clinics, are there ways to publicize the 182, 183 hotline number so that they know that this hotline number is relevant to them? So these are the questions I'd like to ask. Under Secretary. Chairman, I will invite Assistant Director to supplement my answer. But let me take the last question on the number of calls for emergency placement on the low side. I think there is a major reason here. That is, the carers themselves will also need to let go in order for the person under care to receive respite services. If they're not willing to use our services, then we will consider how we should further improve the mechanism. Assistant Director can supplement. After rolling out this carer hotline since September, we have been in close liaison with the service operator Tung Wah Group of Hospitals to get an understanding of the features of these calls. Usually the calls would come during the day. Some calls may be coming from users making inquiries, but there are also calls from social workers. And the hotline has also come across some frequent callers. I mean, some carers may ring the social workers to air their grievances and seek emotional support. So these chats are helpful. Respite services. This is also one area of service that we attach importance to for carers. Between September and the end of March, according to the paper, 18 cases have been referred to the respite service units. Social workers help liaise with the relevant service units. The social workers also helped making the home visit and escort the service users to the respite service centers. As for publicity, we leverage on multiple channels in public housing estates, hospitals, clinics, public transport, TV, radio stations. We publicize the hotline. We also work with the community leaders. For example, when we meet with the district services and community care teams, we also publicize this service to them. Next, Ms. Connie Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Under Secretary, I appreciate the Carer hotline and the information gateway. But I'd like to reiterate the points I've made before. If we take a look at the annex, the table 1 about the nature of calls handled by the Carer hotline, the majority of calls related to emotional problem, 6,265, and then there are 642 calls relating to mental health problems. So mental health problems are closely related to emotional problems. Now, Under Secretary, I've always asked for a meeting with you to discuss the issue. So my question for the Social Welfare Department is this. For those with emotional problem, will follow-up action be taken? Will there be a call? Will you call them back? Because I also manned the hotline before. It's a 24-hour hotline. Our performance pledge is to take the calls immediately, and then we will also take follow-up action the following day. We will ring them back. Say a few days ago, there was a call seeking emotional support. And then 3 days after, would the hotline ring the caller back as a preventive measure so that this emotional problem will not escalate into a mental health problem? This 182, 183 may be overlapping with the other hotline, 18111. So, Under Secretary, will you consider combining these two? Because when callers usually ring 182, 183, they should in fact ring 18111. I don't know who mans this hotline. I know that these are trained social workers. They are professionals. The third point is this. How do you assess whether the information gateway and the carer hotline are effective in helping the carers? Because earlier you held a carnival for carers, and then subsequently you've set up the carer hotline and the information gateway. The users are consumers. Will there be a rating system so that with just a click of a button, you can rate the service, just like how I rated the service of the sales person? Now, if there is no rating system, you cannot receive feedback from users on whether the carer hotline is effective. The fourth point is this. Emergency support. May I know more about the progress? How do you define what emergency means? How urgent is it? Because, say, I used to work at the front line, and we worked according to a protocol in handling calls relating to somebody who's about to jump off the building. About the information gateway, the hit rate reached some 350,000. Well, I think I'm one of the users contributing to the hit rate because I access the website all the time. I also tell residents in my neighborhood to do the same. Hit rate doesn't mean anything. I mean, it doesn't mean everything, because I clicked this website and I wanted to dial FaceTime. Can you add this function? Because some elderly people or disabled users may not know this function. They may be in a bad mood, they may have emotional issues, and then they can just click this button to start a video call with a social worker. These people may not know typing. And also AI chatbot, will you add this function as well?
Undersecretary, I'll ask Ms. Leung, Assistant Director, to answer the questions. First, regarding emotional problems, quite a number of callers called because they have emotional problems. For some of these cases, we provide immediate support services. If the callers agree, the social workers would make referrals to follow-up service units. From September to March this year, the hotline refers 470 cases to welfare service units, including cases with callers of emotional problems. For some cases, if consent cannot be obtained from the callers, the social workers who man the hotline would follow up. They would call the caller afterwards to follow on the case to see if they agree to the referrals. Regarding the collaboration with the 18111 hotline, we do work with them. If there are cases relating to carers with the 18111 hotline, they will refer the case to 182 183. As to how we assess the quality of their service, we've signed a service agreement with the operators, and we do have a performance pledge set out in the agreement. After the call, the social workers would ask the caller if they are satisfied with the service provided, and we'd ask the operator to keep such data, and then we will make assessment. As for emergency support, there is a collaboration mechanism with the 999 hotline. When we receive emergency cases, we will refer the case to the police. And we're talking about very emergent calls that are of urgent nature. If the carers need to go to the doctor or need to leave the home, we will have to take into account whether the persons with disabilities can be taken care of, and if necessary, the social worker will refer them to respite service units. If the foreign domestic helper in the family cannot take care of the person in need, the social worker will also arrange emergency support service. As for video call service, the hotline asks the operators to include or create a non-voice function for service users who don't want to talk. Thank you. Chairman, I would like to know if there is any return visit for cases with mild problems. Can I ask the operators to conduct risk assessment by calling them back? If the service users agree, we can refer them to relevant welfare service units. If they don't give consent, then the social workers will still call the caller after some time to see if they have any needs. Meanwhile, the social worker will also assess if there is any risk involved, and if there is, the social worker will follow up. Chairman, I would like to also ask about the chatbot. they have not addressed my questions. As for chatbots, actually on the information gateway there is a hyperlink leading to 182, 183. And we will consider including an AI search function so that there can be a chatbot assisting in the search. Now it's my turn. I would like to thank the government for stepping up their efforts on supporting carers. They have created a hotline and an information gateway. Now they have been in operation for some time. I think that the data that we've gathered would help government's formulation of policies. We have received so many calls from carers. Well, we've talked about building a database for carers. I think that with the data that we have, we can start working on it. Now, with the district services and community care teams that we have in Tsuen Wan and Southern District, the carers have their stress alleviated, and I think that it's time for us to create a database for carers. For frontline officers manning the information gateway and hotline, will they be able to categorize different carers? For example, carers taking care of high-risk cases. Undersecretary. For 182, 183 in the information gateway as well as the community care teams, they serve different purposes. We make use of the information gateway and the hotline to support our carers, but the community care teams would mostly support the carers in their districts. The information gateway and hotline would not require carers to leave behind their data. But as for the community care teams, they would have the address and phone numbers of the carers. As to how we can really link the hotline information gateway up with the community care teams, we have to work on that. We've been talking about support for carers, but we don't have a database. I think that without a database, it's difficult for the government to formulate targeted policies. You said that the hotline and information gateway do not retain information of the carers, but I think that we have to do that. There will only be more and more carers in the future, and there will be greater demand of support from them. If we have a database on the number of carers in every district, that will help the government. Thank you. We will think about that. You have categorized the nature of the calls, but how many carers are of high risk? I will ask Ms. Learn to talk about the categorization of carers and calls. As you can see on the table, the nature of calls, we categorize the calls in accordance with the nature. Some callers may call because they have different problems, including emotional problem and financial problem. As to how we distinguish if a carer is of high risk, we will have to ask the social worker to create a checklist. For example, if there is only one carer in the family and if the carer has problems of their own, there was a case where a carer took care of an elderly person at home and the carer was diagnosed with cancer. And the carer themselves are of high stress, and we think that with such a case there is risk involved, and the social worker would help them match with support services, for example, respite services. Apart from them, they will refer the family to the IFSC and the DSC, the District Service Centers. As to whether we can categorize the calls into different nature any further, we will have to look into that. My question is that with the designated hotline and information gateway, you can create a database for carers. Only with the database will you be able to formulate measures to support carers. Thank you. Next, Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I think that the designated hotline is quite useful, and there have been quite a number of tragedies relating to carers. I hope that the government can step up publicity for the hotline. As at end March 2024, you have received 16,490 calls. Is the number of calls in line with your expectation? Is the capacity enough to cater to such a number of calls? Just now, Undersecretary talked about collaboration with the community care teams. I know that there are certain difficulties involved because recently I've come across a case where a middle-class family is involved. There was a elderly double-ton taking care of a grandchild because the parents of the child are no longer here, and the child has some medical needs and they have to go to the hospital very frequently. But the two grandparents suffer from pain issues, and they reach out to the community care teams. But the community care teams couldn't really help them because the grandparents want a vehicle to take the grandchild to the hospital. But the family is a middle-class family, and they are not covered under the policies of the Social Welfare Department. And at the end, the department could not help them, and the grandparents have to reach out to their friends for help. There are a number of barriers to be removed here if we want to help this pair of grandparents. But I think that if we can work with the community care teams to take care of the carers, that would be better. And I think that we should not divide the carers in need into different classes. I'm sure that you've heard about a case with a mother in Tongcheng who abandoned 3 children at home, and the son actually made a call to the police to report on the case. But if the son didn't know how to make a call, then perhaps another tragedy would happen. If the mother knew about this hotline 182 183, she could have called when she no longer could take it. And I wonder what kind of supports can be provided to the mother.
Undersecretary, about immediate support, I will give the floor to Assistant Director Leung. About the middle class, I fully understand what Ms. Chan said. We provide subvented or subsidized services, so we need to have regard to the income brackets. We understand that some users are from the middle class, and we provide information through the information gateway. That means if they belong to the middle class or they are better off, although they may not be eligible for subsidized services, they can pay from their own pocket for these services. So we will make referrals, recommend these services to them. These may be fee-charging services that can cater to the needs of the middle class. Assistant Director can supplement the other point about the carer hotline and the number of calls, whether we're meeting targets and whether we still have capacity for more calls. The answer is in the affirmative. Since September, roughly every day we took 80 to 100 calls. And as explained, we publicized the hotline through different channels. We've yielded results. For the number of calls received in March and February, that's been an increase. In March, we received 3,500 calls. In February, we only received 2,300 or so calls. So within a month, we've received 1,000 more calls, and we will continue to mount publicity. And that is why if we receive 100 calls through the hotline and we have 100 lines available, there is still capacity. And depending on the nature of these calls, in fact, we can make immediate referrals for respite services. We also have outreach social workers who can escort the service users to the service units. Coming back to my last point, on this Tongcheng case, if we're able to have seamless cooperation with the district services and care teams, then when this carer, being a mother, can't take it anymore and call 182 183, then you can refer the case to the community care teams. This the neighbor could be a member of this care team. I hope that you will think along these lines for the sake of helping those in need. Otherwise, if it takes 1 or 2 hours for a referral to be made to a service unit, this mother may not be able to put up with it. Yes, I note your point, but after all, the care teams are operating on a voluntary basis. It's difficult to provide support around the clock, whereas for the carer hotline, it operates round the clock. Now, we don't exactly know when this mother in the Tongcheng case would walk out. So, of course, the social worker should be notified first, and of course, we will explore the option of working with the care teams. Right, Chairman, I'm not suggesting that the care team should take this up as well. I just want to make sure that we have good communication and good working basis to avoid tragedies. Yes, I note what Ms. Chan said. I None of us would like to see any tragedy happening. It's really sad. I think the crux of the members' point is that you should step up publicity. At that moment, even if the mother called the hotline, respite services might not be provided because it was a spark of the moment. There was a dispute at home and it was not quite possible to look for respite services there and then. But at least if the carer had called the hotline, then at least she could have sought emotional support so that she could calm down and continue to look after her children at home first. So since there is still capacity for the hotline to take more calls, you should step up publicity. Because if you are engaging the care teams to pay home visits, they are at the front line getting in touch with these families. So you should make sure there is good communication with the care teams. The floor will be open for a second round. The same speaking time limit applies. Ms. Connie Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Now, on the point of support for carers and the district services and community care teams. Now, Ms. Judy Chan mentioned this case in Tung Chung, and I can't help but think of the case in Beacon Hill. The district services and community care teams are not omnipotent. I think that we should consider whether you have sufficiently publicized the hotline and the services. You are reaching out to the lower income class or even the middle class, but what about the upper middle class? The upper class, the well-off families would not like to air their dirty laundries. So, in fact, they are the ones who don't know how to seek help. Or they may want to seek help, only that they do not want to lose face. They dare not speak out. Also, the spouse or children of the needy person may stop the user from speaking out. So when it comes to community work, we often focus on the lower class or the middle class, but there is often little support for the upper class. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking how we should reach out to more housing estates, the private housing estates, that is. Maybe you can organize a carnival or conduct preliminary assessment so as to identify possible cases. Earlier, we discussed the Carers Carnival, and through holding these activities, we were able to identify some cases. So you should collaborate with the business sector and reach out to the private housing estates. Say for crime or fraud prevention in Ma On Shan, we've held a carnival. It's actually happening in a shopping mall. It's a private property. So under Secretary, you can have a carnival or fun day for carers of elderly in Cheung Kwan O or in Ma On Shan, and then you can help identify the hidden cases. We also have the problem of elderly at risk. How do we identify the hidden elderly people? It is not sufficient just to ask outreach social workers from your service centers to reach out to them. Next point, we should leverage on the community care teams, but they are not so all-rounded. You need to give them training and raise their awareness. So at least they should have an awareness, the awareness of mental health needs. Say if there is somebody who's acting quite strangely, who may be having some emotional issues, this person may be looking after a family of a number of needy users. We need to give care teams training. I think very soon I will need to take up training of care team members. They are bursting at the seam. We have the SWD, HA, and various service units. We should form a network to provide one-stop service. These service units should not work independently. We should provide one-stop service through the 182, 183 hotline so that the service users will not need to do welfare shopping to look for various services. The other point is about case management. Tragedies happen day in, day out. Many of these tragedies relate to carers. There should be effective assessment of the risk levels of the families concerned. This is carried out by the Social Welfare Department and the NGOs. As for a way forward, this is something for you to mull over in your service planning. Under Secretary, as I mentioned at the last meeting, we don't expect the care teams to be the troubleshooter. We leverage on their neighborhood network so that team members could pay home visits to the users to provide them with support, or at least let them know that these services are available to them. And then these care teams can help make referrals. Ms. Lam asked the help provided to the middle-class families or the upper-class families. In fact, we are also very proactive in this regard. In Cheung Kwan O or Ma On Shan, the Social Welfare Department and other service units have ways to reach out to these families. And of course, if they're willing to provide a venue for free for us to hold fun days and carnivals, and then that's even better. Responding to Ms. Connie Lam said, exactly, for the upper class, such as the household in Beacon Hill, no such a facility is available. So we need to publicize our services to them, and we need to help them break this mental barrier so that they are willing to speak out and tell us their problems. As a first step, we should start with the grassroots families, the middle class. As for private housing estates, stately homes, we need to ponder this question. Well, in fact, the care teams visited some well-off families. They didn't receive positive report in the media, but in fact, it's a good deed. It's a good way to open up and start a dialogue with these families. And there are different needs, and there are different services that can cater to these needs. So we start with the middle class and the grassroots families. As for the upper or middle upper class or upper class, this is something that we need to consider further.
Commissioner for Rehabilitation, please. Regarding how we can further promote the hotline, apart from offline campaigns and visits made by the community care teams, another way that we can boost our publicity is to make use of mass media. Recently, we've made use of TV programs to advertise our service. Through a celebrities sharing, we were able to promote a hotline. And we need the carers to open up. Not only grassroots family need support. Even celebrities need support as well. And through the sharing of these celebrities on TV programs, we can bring the message home to people of different classes. I would like to thank the members for her comment, and we will step up our publicity and promotion. I think that the measures that you have are very helpful. We'll see how you further step up your promotion and publicity. For the case in Tongcheng, if the mother was made aware of the hotline, she could have called. So there is still room for improvement. So now we wrap up this item. Agenda item number 2, support for special school leavers. LC paper number CB bracket 2546/2024 bracket 03. Under Secretary, would you make a presentation? Thank you. Chairman. The government is determined to support the carers of special school leavers so that they can transition to the community, living and relieving stress of their families and carers. This paper is to brief members on the designated teams and the progress of our work. It's announced in the Chief Executive's 2023 policy address that designated teams will be set up in the second quarter of 2024 to proactively contact the carers of special school leavers 6 months before graduation to provide training on caring and interaction skills, arrange post-school care plans, and link with community support services. Last year, after an announcement of the measure, the Social Welfare Department have engaged in consultation services, and we've talked to special school principals, social workers, the district support centers for persons with disabilities, and parents to talk to them about our plans and to gauge their comments. The designated teams talk to the principal and social workers of the special schools, and we have organized briefing sessions for parents of persons with disabilities to talk to them about the work of the designated teams and to refer them to services that they need so that schools can make referrals when necessary and to gauge support from the parents. In April this year, in the 21 district support centers for persons with disabilities, the SW set up a designated team in each of the centers, which means that there is one per center to commence the provision of support for school leavers and their parents, carers in collaboration with special schools, including organizing talks, activities, workshops to reach out to special school students, their families, carers to support information or provide information about community support service. We organized mutual support groups or training programs for carers to strengthen their caring and interaction skills, and arranging personal development, social and recreational groups or therapeutic groups for special school leavers. Also, we provided case management service, including counseling, emotional support, formulation of short-term and long-term care plans, matching with appropriate community support service for special school leavers and their families or carers, and regularly following up on cases through home visits, school visits, outreaching, and case meetings to assist school leavers to adjust to community living. The staffing establishment of each designated team comprises 2 assistant social work officers, an occupational therapist, a motor driver, and a personal care worker, under the supervision of a social worker with at least 5 years of experience. In addition, each designated team is subsidized to procure a vehicle for escorting needy cases to visit rehabilitation services units to get familiarized with the environment in order to adapt to community living and facilitate their participation in community events together with their families or carers. Six months prior to the boarding schools, leaving schools, the designated team will support them Considering that boarding students generally require more time to adjust to post-school life and the feedback from the special schools and parents, the designated teams will provide service to boarding students who will leave school in the coming 12 months until 18 months after they graduate. So on the 1st of April, the designated teams will provide service to the boarding schools, students, and parents who will leave the schools in 2023-24. We expect that there will be 600 special school students and parents that will benefit from the establishing of designated teams. Thank you. Members who would like to put questions can press the button now. Each member will have 6 minutes, please. Ms. Lam So-wai. Thank you, Chairman. I support the designated teams to support special school leavers. Regarding the case in Diamond Hill, the child involved left special school and did not receive any support afterwards. As for the staffing establishment, I think that's very sufficient, but I wonder if you can actually recruit enough social worker. That is ASWO. I know that there will be a motor driver under the team and the team will be subsidized to procure a vehicle. I wonder what the vehicle will be procured for, because the DSC will be equipped with a vehicle already. So will this designated team have an office, or will they have an office inside the DSC? So why will you be providing subsidy to procure a vehicle and hire a motor driver? And it is said that the service operators are required to submit service data to SWD on a quarterly basis. So will you be releasing the data also on monitoring of service implementation? Is there any mechanism for that? Since the incident in Diamond, there was another case in Sao Mau Ping where 2 persons with intellectual disabilities who were starved to death. So apart from persons with disabilities, you also care about young people. Will you consider providing peer support as well? I used to study in the Polytechnic University. When I studied rehabilitation and social work, we talked to persons with intellectual disabilities and special learning needs. We went outside together, and there are still some persons whom I worked with back in the days who reached out to me. So I wonder if there is any peer support under the scheme for persons with autistic, Asperger's. Sometimes there are high-functioning persons with autism, and some of them are of mild cases. They could be peer mentors, just like what we do with the Strive and Rise program, so that we have, say, peer mediators to help young people with intellectual disabilities and special learning needs so that they can integrate into the community. I'll ask Ms. Leung to answer the questions relating to the service data. As mentioned, under the establishment, the designated team will be equipped with a vehicle and a motor driver, so that the school leavers can familiarize themselves with the environment in order to adapt to community living. Some students have stayed in their boarding schools for quite a number of years, and they didn't really have the opportunity to walk in the community. Apart from arranging visits for the students so that they know what resources are available in the community, the vehicle will allow the students to know where they can go to receive community support and rehabilitation service. And the parents with a vehicle would be able to bring their children to the facilities in the community so that they know what resources are available for them. That's different from the vehicle under the DSC, because the vehicle under the DSC are for the service users. That is why we equip the designated team with the vehicle and a motor driver. As for service data, in accordance with our service agreement, the service providers have to meet certain requirements. Apart from asking them to submit service data, they have to meet the requirements on the number of home visits and consultation service, as well as caseload. The service operators have to seek feedback from parents. Our monitoring mechanism, we will see if the service operators meet our standards. As for peer support, apart from requiring the service operators to handle a specific number of cases, we ask the service operators to organize group activities. There could be peer support among special school leavers, and we ask the school leavers to share their experience with those that are still at school. And we also facilitate exchange among parents so that they can share experience with each other. And that's what the designated team would do as well. So how many school leavers will the designated team serve? Do you have the number? 600 per year. Are you talking about 600 a year per district? We expect that there will be 600 school leavers per year. So you're talking about they're talking about the number of graduates, they're school leavers. Will there be any duplication of resources? And will the DSC make use of the vehicles for other purposes? Because the vehicle of the DSC may be left idle, they may use it for other purposes. Well, I think that the service operators have to make use of the resources that we give them for the designated purpose. The DSC serves all persons with disabilities, not just special school leavers. So as long as the vehicles is used to cater to the needs of service users, that's fine. Chairman, I would like to also follow up on the question with peer supporters or mediators. For persons with disabilities or persons with intellectual disabilities, we don't have this concept of peer supporters. Different from persons in mental recovery, there is this idea of peer mediators or supporters, because these people in mental recovery, they have already recovered, and that is why it is perhaps suitable for them to become a supporter for their peers. But as for persons with mental or intellectual disabilities, we have to look at their abilities. As mentioned, we have support groups and activities to achieve similar results. What about young people with mild-grade SEN? They may not be persons with intellectual disabilities. Can we ask the service providers to ask the persons with mild SEN to become peer supporters.
Next, Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I think the needy families will be happy to hear about these services. Definitely, they will get the support they need. And according to this paper, the service just began on the 1st of April. Is that right? Can you give us more information? For example, challenges, obstacles facing you since the rollout early this month? Is it within your expectation? You expect to serve 600 school leavers a year, and that there will be one designated team in each of the 21 district support centers for PWDs. 600 school leavers is just a ballpark figure. I want to know the breakdown. There may be different numbers of school leavers served by the respective district support centers. So there will be uneven distribution of resources. Say some centers may take up more cases and some centers may be left idle. I'll give the floor to the Deputy Director. There are 53 special schools in Hong Kong. We have 21 designated teams. So that means each designated team serves the school leavers in 2 or 3 special schools. We just started this scheme on the 1st of April. It's been a month. And according to our understanding, over 100 cases have been received by the designated teams. And they are working full steam because very soon the school term will end. And before April, in fact, these designated teams already visited schools to hold seminars and familiarized themselves with the parents, teachers. That is why just in April they were able to take up 100 cases. But of course, we need to publicize the services to parents, and we need to have the parents' consent for the schools to refer the school leavers to these services. As a start, we will publicize the services to parents through holding activities, etc., so as to gain the recognition and acceptance of parents. Is it a fee charging service? No. So next, my turn. This is a voluntary service. Is that right? My question is on manpower. Is there supervision? Because just now a member asked how you ensure that the vehicle assigned will be put to proper use. Now, I want to know whether the staff in each team will not overlap with the social workers in their respective service units, because my concern is that you may be asking the same person to wear different hats. So one day you're working in the center, next day you're working for this designated team. How do you communicate with the different service units? The designated teams will be stationed at the district support centers for PWDs. So I'd say that in terms of manpower, the resources are shared. However, these are designated teams responsible for school leavers of special schools. they need to communicate with the parents as well, because these parents have quite intensive needs. So the teams will need to gauge the needs of the families as well as the wish of the parents. The person in charge running the center will be responsible for making manpower arrangements to make sure that these portfolios are undertaken in a proper manner. The centers will need to utilize resources from different sources to provide training. For example, an occupation therapist will be assigned to each team, and this OT will provide services at the centers as well, in a bid to provide a multifaceted support for the special school leavers. Yes, I fully agree with what you said. The designated teams should have a very focused portfolio. They are set up to support special school leavers. And that is why we want to make sure that there won't be overlapping of staffing establishments of the teams and the DSEs. I mean, after some time, you should monitor the progress and the work of the service units, because otherwise the demands won't be met in full. There will still be resource constraints. In fact, I heard from the frontline social workers that they wear different hats. They take too much. There is too much on their plate, and they only receive pay from one center. And in fact, if you set up teams like this, you are making them wear more hats and having more responsibilities. You need to make sure that these designated teams will have a very focused objective. In the funding and service agreements, we set out that a certain number of social workers must be provided. So at least this condition should be met. It's not possible that one social worker should be allowed to take up different posts. Well, they do have the head counts as set out here. Each team will have one officer, so on and so forth. So let's say if there is a driver for the center, you can ask the driver to be the motor driver in the establishment of the designated team as well. Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, Chairman. I'm late because I was in another meeting. I need to make this declaration at the outset, Chairman. My nephew once studied in a special school. So, special school leavers is something close to my heart. I know that it's difficult for them. About the period in which they've left school, I see there is a cap. They have left school within 18 months, and that's the cap. On what basis have you set this criterion? For some special school leavers, they need to wait for 12 years before they get a residential place for adults. They also need to wait for a number of years before getting a place in a sheltered workshop. So, for school leavers who have left school for a period longer than the criterion set here, where should they go? And also about identifying site for residential care homes for adult school leavers. May I know the progress? For special school graduates who have left school within 18 months, they will still be eligible for this support service. There will be dovetailing with rehabilitation services for adults, including daytime training and other rehab services. And meanwhile, if this school leaver is offered a residential care home place or daycare place, the designated team will help with the dovetailing process because, as we know, the special school leavers require time to adjust to their post-school life. And our assessment is that it may take up to 18 months for them to adapt to the new living environment. Of course, we will draw on the experience and see whether this period should be lengthened. As for the next step, it depends on whether they get a place. And if they haven't got a place yet, the DSCs will provide training for them. And that is why the designated teams will be set up in the respective district support centers. And it is common knowledge that the users have to wait for a long time for a place in the RCHD. Let me share with you the latest statistics. Some of the special school graduates this year have been allocated a residential care place, and this is good news. In fact, the rehabilitation service complex in Siu Lam has been commissioned since December. If there is no special preference, especially for care home places for the severely disabled, as I mentioned, for the current cohort who will be graduating soon, they will be able to get a place. So if there is no special preference on the part of parents or school leavers on the location of the residential care home, we will be able to provide a place for them. We will continue to increase the supply of residential care places and day training places through different channels. We will increase the number of places in a gradual manner. Anything else from Ms. Doreen Kong? Yes. My question is about the progress of identifying sites for hostel places for the adults. Yes, about the provision of the facilities, please. As I mentioned, we have the rehabilitation service complex in Siu Lam. It has just been commissioned, and in the coming months, we will increase the number of places for residential care homes as well as day training centers. Perhaps we can supplement this information to the member later. For the RCHD places for adults, I'd like to have a breakdown of the places by geographical location and the numbers in the coming 5 years. All right, you can provide this information later. For the coming 5 years, the demand will be met by the integrated rehab in service complex in Siu Lam. What about the next 5-year period? Will there be more sites identified for residential care homes? Please give us information after the meeting.
咁啊，林素慧議員。
Ms. Lam Wai for the second round, please. Thank you, Chairman. On manpower deployment, I would like to share my experience. When I worked in the NGO, they actually hired people on 0.5, 0.25, 0.25 basis. When the designated team hire people, it's very difficult for them because we don't have much manpower in the social welfare sector. And they actually hire people on, for example, a 0.5 basis. Perhaps the person hired would dedicate 50% of their time at a certain section and another 50% of their time at B department, for example. If I was hired at the A department and I was asked by my senior management to work at the B department, I could not say no. So how do we make sure that the service operators would not do this? Under the staffing establishment, we have 2 ASWO, 1 OT, 1 MD, and 1 PCW. Is this social worker that is supervisor included in the staffing establishment? No. Well, we need a social worker with at least 5 years experience. These 21 designated team only serve 600 people. I think that there's too much resources dedicated to the designated teams, and the people hired under the designated teams will not have enough work to do. The DSC cannot hire enough people, and they have to hire a lot of substitute social workers. When the social work officers under the designated teams do not have enough work to do, they would be deployed to work for other departments under the district support centers. And under the lump sum grant, they can hire different part-time workers, and sometimes it's difficult for them to hire enough social workers. And if they cannot hire enough social welfare officers, they could hire social work welfare assistant instead. If I cannot hire social welfare officer, I can hire SWA instead, because I received a lump sum grant and there is no specifications as to the composition of staff members that DSC have to hire. For young people with special needs or intellectual disabilities, they are getting younger and younger. And that is why we need support service. I hope that the government can give us some data on the number of RCHDs that will be commissioned in the coming 5 to 10 years. For boarding school leavers, I can apply to work at sheltered workshops. If I don't go for sheltered workshops, what other service am I entitled to? If I have to go for residential care home for the disabilities because I'm 50 years old and my parents are old, I wonder how many people are on the waiting list and the waiting time for the residential care homes for the elderly disabilities. Do you have such a figure, Undersecretary? Well, because the topic of discussion today is designated team to support special school leavers, and Ms. Lam was asking about a regular rehabilitation service. I will see if I can supplement with any figure after the meeting, or perhaps we can discuss this in the meeting of the panel on welfare services. When we sign funding a service agreement with the service operators, we have certain standards on the specified outcome for ensuring service quality. Under the lump sum grant, we provide flexibility for the service operators to use their resources. We don't want the service operators to save any cost. We look at and monitor their service quality, and we hope that they will make full use of the employees that they have hired, but we allow flexibility for deployment of manpower. But the service outcome cannot, have to meet our standards. Thank you. I'll ask Ms. Lan to supplement. Under the funding and service agreement, as service operators have certain flexibility to make use of the resources that they are allocated with. We believe that our service operators are professional. So how do we monitor their service and performance? Well, they have to provide a certain number of service times and they have to meet specified outcome standards. So in terms of quality and number of care service provided, they have to meet our standards. As for the waiting time for welfare services, let me supplement. Last year, we have created a number of new residential care places, and we see a decrease in the waiting time. For residential care homes for persons with severe disabilities in 2022, the waiting time was 16 months, and last year it dropped to 48 months. The waiting time is still not ideal, but we've been working on increasing the number of residential care places for persons with severe disabilities. Thank you. Next, Ms. Lillian Kwok for the first round. Thank you, Chairman. On support to special school leavers, apart from cases that have to be referred to the RCHD, some special school leavers can actually integrate into the community, and they are of some mild cases of intellectual disabilities. In Shanghai, some MR can actually work in coffee shop. At iBakery, we have persons with mild intellectual disabilities who work there. I visited some special schools recently, and there are some marginal cases that have actually been allocated to mainstream schools. But as they progress, they can either go for Shine Skill Centers or they can be employed in the community. So what have I observed? Well, there are some persons that are high functioning that have entered Shine Skill Centers. There was a case where a person passed the visual arts subject in the DSE, but when that person entered Shine Skill Center, they had to play with a painting that with macaroni, like what we do in kindergarten. The Shine Skill Center is subsidized. And after completing the course, the person have to leave the center and then start another course after some time. Another case that I would like to share involve a marginal case, a person who is employable and they enter the Shine Skill Center. But eventually the person could not be employed in the mainstream society. We don't have enough manpower in the community these days. If we can make or encourage this group of special school leavers to integrate into the society and work, that will alleviate the burden on the government. Eventually, that special school leaver committed suicide because they don't want to impose a heavy burden on their family, and that person were aged only 25. Special school teachers dedicated much efforts on these persons with intellectual disabilities. They want to encourage them to integrate into the community. As the government, do you have any measures to link the ability of these people with the demand and need of private enterprises? I remember previously we had measures to support the employees of employers of private enterprises to hire these special school leavers. Maybe we can subsidize these employers with, for example, $50,000, like what we do with the GBA YES scheme. Very often, or sometimes the employers actually just dismiss the persons with intellectual disabilities after the funding is no longer dispersed to them. If we encourage this group of people to work in the community, that would alleviate the burden of the entire society and drive our economy. This would also alleviate the financial burden of the government in taking care of this group of people and also ease the stress faced by carers. Thank you. Undersecretary, well, perhaps the Commissioner will take the question. Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the questions put by Ms. Lam, for special school leavers or persons with special learning needs, well, Shine Skills Center is a facility to provide training to this group of people. For people who can be employed, we do have a matching service provided by the Labor Department to encourage employers to give opportunities to this group of people. We also have financial incentives for employers to hire persons that are employable. The Shine Skills Center update their courses according to the demand on the market. Some special school leavers and Shine Skills Center students may not be able to join the mainstream labor force. Through Social Welfare Department, we have measures to help them, and we also have financial incentives to encourage employers to hire them. Through social enterprises, we do have a funding subsidy dispersed by the Social Welfare Department. If the social enterprise hire persons with disabilities that take up 50% of their workforce, the Social Welfare Department will disperse subsidy to them, and we train our centers and we provide support to our employers. We also have sheltered workshop and offered by the Labor Department, and through the support schemes that we have for social enterprises, we hope that the special school leavers and persons with disabilities can contribute to the community and gain job satisfaction. We will continue to update our service. Chairman, I would like to add to what I said. I hope that the Shine Skills Centers will continue to update their courses according to the market demand. Second, I hope that we can encourage collaboration among enterprises, government, and schools. Also, I hope that you can subsidize employers who hire persons with intellectual disabilities and help them retrofit some of their facilities so that they can hire persons with disabilities. Fourth, the employment rate of persons with disability who graduate from the university is only some 30%. I hope that you can encourage them to integrate into the community and help them. Please note Ms. Lam's comment. And I think that the designated teams are equipped with very sufficient resources because they have only received some 100 cases. Perhaps they can really help these school leavers get a job, because we spend quite a lot of money on these dedicated teams or designated teams. And also we should consolidate our existing resources. I know that we have some measures, initiatives under the Labor Department, Perhaps we can facilitate collaboration between Labor Department and the Shine Skill Centers.
Next, Ms. Doreen Kong. Chairman, for the designated teams to support special school leavers, they have a very specific task on their hand. They are tasked to support special school leavers. There is a clear definition of their service target. There are 21 district support centers for persons with disabilities. In fact, I just checked their locations online. And a designated team will be set up in each of the 21 DSCs. As for the staffing establishment, it comprises 2 assistant social work officers, an occupational therapist, a motor driver, a personal care worker, under the supervision of a social worker, and each team is subsidized to procure a vehicle. It's very rigid. It says each district support center will come with a designated team. That means across 21 district support centers, there will be 21 teams, 21 motor drivers, 21 vehicles, etc. And the annual expenditure is about $110 million. I want to know whether this is a pilot scheme. Is it a trial? I didn't catch it. What about the variations in the caseload in different districts? Because according to your paper, you estimate that 600 school leavers and their families and carers in a year will benefit from the service. But as the title suggests, the designated teams will specifically serve special school leavers only. So each year, only about 600 school leavers will benefit from it. I want to know whether this scheme will run on the long term, and also about special school leavers concentrating in certain districts only. Will there be secondment of staff and vehicles between these centers? Because we need to make sure that $110 million will spent only to support special school leavers. What if there are some cases in some, there are more cases in some districts, and in some other districts the vehicles are left idle? Next, about the $110 million for 21 teams in the district support centers. Does it mean that each team will spend about $5 million a year, which should cover the expenditure for staff, the driver, and the vehicle? And if the service is expected to benefit about 600 people a year, that means per center, only 30 users will benefit from it. Spending $110 million every year, that means we're spending $183,000 per beneficiary each year. It's not that I don't support the scheme, Chairman. I just want to make sure that this is value for money. What about the KPIs? How are they set? Instead of just telling us that it will benefit 600 people, how do you make sure that the teams will work effectively? Wouldn't it be more convenient just to help them get a taxi? Under Secretary. Well, Ms. Doreen Kong wasn't here when I gave the opening remarks, and I can give the floor to the Deputy Director to supplement. In fact, we have explained the situation. As Ms. Doreen Kong must know, since she has a nephew who is a special school leaver, these special school students will get 1 day off each week to go. So that's 1 day home leave. Other than that, they usually stay in the schools. And at the moment, there are a few challenges. Parents are not adapting well to the post-school life of the school leavers and they're unable to find suitable services. That is how the designated teams come in. They are equipped with a vehicle because some school leavers may have different disabilities. Some are more serious in nature, some may be wheelchair bound, and a vehicle therefore is needed to help them get around. It may not be easy to help them get a rehab taxi. For the details, I'll give the floor to my colleague, Chairman. Let me elaborate on this service. This is a regular service, it's not a pilot. We have 53 special schools across the territory. We have 21 district support centers. Each center will have one designated team, and each team will serve 2 to 3 special schools. As for KPIs, apart from taking up cases of special school leavers, we also set KPIs for home visits, meetings with schools, teachers, etc. The teams will also need to provide certain sessions of advisory or consultation sessions with the users. As I explained just now, the teams will also need to organize some activities, group activities for school leavers and their parents each year. As for staffing and the procurement of vehicles, the Undersecretary already elaborated on it. So just to add on what he said, apart from taking parents and school leavers on visits in these vehicles, we will also arrange for the school leavers to attend job interviews. That means the service operator will need to give tailor-made plans for the school leavers. For those with severe disabilities, they will be assisted in their post-school life. For those with milder disabilities, we can make use of the vehicles, and the staff concerned will help escort them to attend job interviews. What about triage? Will there be a triage system? As I said, each designated team is paired with 2 to 3 special schools, so the distribution is even. I have a follow-up question, Chairman. How long will you provide support for each service target? Because of limited resources, each year you will only help 600 school leavers. Many special school leavers are unable to get a job after they graduate. It is impossible to provide them with lifelong support. There must be a time limit. So can you explain to me for how long will the school leavers get your support? Because there are limitations. There will always be the next cohort of special school leavers. So you should set a time limit as to how long the NGOs should continue to support the service targets. My next question is this. Say if support will only be provided for 12 months, you will be taking the service target to attend job interviews, etc. And then when you run out of money, what happens if this person is not offered a residential care place, is not offered a job? Then there will be a very different treatment, like going from heaven to hell for these school leavers. Well, let me explain that We will provide the support service to special school graduates up to 18 months after they've left school. But in fact, before they leave school, we start to provide services to them. I fully agree with what Ms. Kong said. Resources are scarce. We cannot provide lifelong support to them. But it's a matter of how we help them adapt to post-school life and how we cater to their care needs. So in terms of support from social workers and case management, we help them adjust to post-school life. The members concerned about the cessation of service 18 months after they've left school, but by then perhaps they will have learned how to get a rehab taxi, and they will have had access to access to peer support service. They would have become part of a peer network. There might be issues of adjusting to post-school life for some, and this is where the scheme comes in. All right, anyone else? Assistant Director, you'd like to supplement? About the bridging issue, this is also our concern. If services are available, this user will be tied over from one place to another. If not, then support will be provided by the district support centers for PWDs, and that is why we set up the designated teams in the DSCs. This will help allay the concern of gap in service provision after 18 months. Chairman, I just want to say that there is more to be decided when it comes to the matching service for adults requiring residential care. We're spending $110 million a year. I think this could have been avoided. I understand the objective of the scheme, but I don't think this is addressing the problem at its root. For those with severe disability, you should make sure that at every step of the way there should be proper dovetailing, and you should also enhance service provision in order to tackle the problem at source. Please note Ms. Kong's comment. When it comes to policy formulation, we need to consider the short, medium, and long term. In the long term, ideally, residential care places should be provided to the special school leavers. But before this long-term goal is met, we need to introduce a shorter-term policies. Next, any other business? Since the establishment of the subcommittee on the 23rd of May 2023, we've held 7 meetings to discuss policy related to carers territory-wide, and we also sought views from deputations individuals. We discussed territory-wide publicity campaign on carers, setting up a designated hotline for carer support, information gateway, support for carers projects, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through the list. Safe to say that there are many topics that we have covered. This is the last meeting of the subcommittee. I'd like to thank members and the administration for your full cooperation in taking forward a carer-centric policy. The subcommittee will wrap up its work very soon. I hope that the administration and members will continue to strive for more support for our carers through different platforms. Now, if there is no objection, I will ask the administration to give a written reply to the issues discussed at this meeting. It will be circulated to members, and according to the House rules, a subcommittee set up under a panel should complete its work in 12 months upon commencement, and the report should be submitted to the panel. The Secretariat will help draft this report. The draft will be circulated to members for endorsement. So, members, please watch out for the report. If there is nothing else, the meeting will be adjourned here. Thank you.